The massive space station floated like a metal city among the stars. Nexus Prime was bigger than most planets, with docking bays that could hold 1,000 ships. Today, it buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy arrived for the most important meeting of the year. Captain Jake Morrison stepped off his small human transport ship and looked around the busy docking bay. Creatures of every shape and size moved past him. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others crawled on many legs, and some floated through the air without touching the ground at all. The air filled with strange sounds as different species talked. In their own languages, Jake was 35 years old and had short brown hair and calm blue eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. Unlike the other representatives who traveled with large groups, Jake had come alone. His superiors back on Earth had sent him to observe and learn, not to make big speeches or demands. He followed the signs to the main conference hall, walking through corridors that stretched for miles. The walls showed holographic displays of different worlds, some beautiful and peaceful, others dark and scary. Jake recognized none of them. Earth was still new to this galactic community, having only made contact 3 years ago. The conference hall was enormous. Thousands of seats arranged in circles around a central stage. Each section was designed for different types of beings. Some seats were filled with water for aquatic species. Others glowed with heat for creatures that needed warmth. And some floated in the air for beings that could not sit normally. Jake found the human section, which had only 1 chair. He sat down and pulled out a small tablet to take notes. Around him, the noise grew louder as more representatives arrived. He heard growls, chirps, electronic beeps, and sounds he could not even describe. A tall, thin creature made of what looked like living crystal approached the stage. Its body sparkled with inner light, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. This was Elder Vextar of the Zephyrians, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. "Welcome, beings of the stars," Vextar said. "We gather once again to share the wisdom of survival. Each world teaches its children different lessons. Each species learns to face the dangers that surround them. Today, we honor those lessons." The crowd quieted down as Vextar continued. "For 7 days, we will hear stories of courage, of wisdom, of the fight to live. You will learn from each other. We will grow stronger together." Jake watched as different species cheered in their own ways. Some roared, others flashed bright colors, and a few released pleasant smells into the air. He clapped his hands quietly, not wanting to draw attention. The first speaker was a large, muscular creature covered in green scales. It had 4 arms and stood almost 8 feet tall. This was Commander Thackalon of the Korathi, a warrior race known throughout the galaxy for their strength and courage. "People of the stars," Thackalon said in a deep, rumbling voice, "listen to the tale of the flamed serpents of Caraxus Prime." Jake leaned forward, interested. He had read about different alien worlds, but hearing first-hand stories was much better than reading reports. Thackalon began his tale. "On our world, the mountains burn with eternal fire. In these flames live the flamed serpents, creatures longer than your greatest ships. Their skin is made of liquid metal that burns hotter than stars. When they breathe, they shoot streams of molten rock that can melt through anything." The audience listened with fascination. Some species had never heard of such creatures. "My people, the Korathi, have faced these beasts for 1,000 generations," Thackalon continued. "We cannot hide from them because they see heat. We cannot run from them because they move faster than our fastest vehicles. We can only fight." Thackalon showed scars on his arms and chest, each one telling the story of a battle with these terrible creatures. To become an adult in Korathi society, every young warrior must face a flamed serpent alone. Many do not return. Those who do return carry the honor of survival for the rest of their lives. The crowd made sounds of respect and amazement. Jake wrote notes on his tablet, impressed by the story, but keeping his expression neutral. Next came Elder Whisperclaw of the Pralkin, a cat-like species with silver fur and large, knowing eyes. She moved with the fluid grace of a natural hunter, every step silent and controlled. The shadow stalkers of our desert world are not creatures you can see or touch, she said in a soft voice that somehow carried to every corner of the huge hall. They exist between the spaces of reality. They hunt by moving through dimensions we cannot enter. Jake's interest grew. This sounded like something from a science fiction movie, but the serious faces around him showed this was very real. A shadow stalker can walk through solid rock as if it were air, Whisperclaw explained. It can be in front of you one moment and behind you the next, having passed through your body without you feeling it. The only warning you get is a slight chill in the air and the feeling that something is watching you. She showed long, thin scars along her neck and arms. These marks come from claws that exist in another dimension. The pain follows you for years, because part of the wound exists in a place where time moves differently. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. My people survive by learning to sense the spaces between realities. It takes decades of training to develop this ability. Even then, most encounters with shadow stalkers end in death. We have learned to avoid the deep desert during certain moon phases when the barriers between dimensions grow thin. Jake made more notes, fascinated by the variety of dangers different species faced. On Earth, humans worried about bears, sharks, and poisonous snakes. These aliens dealt with creatures that seemed impossible. More speakers followed, each with stories that seemed more incredible than the last. The glass crystal Zephyrians told of glass storms that hunted in packs, cutting through anything in their path. The aquatic Depthmer described Leviathan crocans, so large they could swallow entire cities. Throughout all these presentations, Jake sat quietly and listened. He asked no questions and made no comments. Other species began to notice the silent human in the corner. Some whispered among themselves, wondering why Earth's representatives seemed so unimpressed by their amazing survival stories. As the first day came to an end, Consul Miran, the ethereal moderator, asked if anyone else wanted to speak. Several eyes turned to Jake, but he simply shook his head politely. Perhaps tomorrow, he said with a small smile. As the crowd dispersed, Jake gathered his notes and headed back to his small quarters. Behind him, alien voices discussed the quiet human, who had said almost nothing on the first day of the greatest survival conference in the galaxy. The second day began with even more impressive stories. Jake arrived at the conference hall early and took his seat in the human section. He watched as thousands of beings filled the enormous space, their conversations creating a symphony of strange sounds and languages. Today, the atmosphere felt different. The first day had been about sharing experiences, but now Jake could sense competition in the air. Species wanted to prove their survival stories were the most impressive, their homeworld dangers the most deadly. Queen Zikra, the Heaven Elf, took the stage first. She looked like a giant praying mantis with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Her exoskeleton was decorated with intricate carvings that told the history of her people. "Citizens of the galaxy," she said in a voice that buzzed and clicked, "hear now of the mind wasps of Hyvenal Prime." Jake watched as holographic images appeared above the stage. They showed a jungle world covered in massive trees and hanging vines. Flying through this green maze were creatures that looked like wasps the size of small aircraft. These parasites do not simply sting the body, Queen Zikra explained. They burrow into the mind itself. Once inside your thoughts, they control everything you do. You become a puppet dancing to their will, while your consciousness screams, trapped inside your own head. The audience made sounds of horror and disgust. Several species moved uneasily in their seats. A single mind wasp can control up to 50 beings at once, the Queen continued. They form networks of controlled minds, using them to build hives and gather food. The worst part is that you remain aware of everything happening. You know you are not in control, but you cannot stop your body from obeying the wasp's commands. Jake wrote notes, impressed despite himself. The idea of losing control of your own mind was terrifying to any thinking being. My people learned to survive through mental discipline, Queen Zekra said. We developed meditation techniques that create barriers in our minds. It takes 30 years of training to build these barriers strong enough to resist a mind wasp. Even then, success is not guaranteed. Many of our greatest warriors have fallen to these creatures, becoming slaves in their own bodies. The crowd responded with respectful silence. Mental control was a fear that crossed all species boundaries. Next came Admiral Glubseth of the Depthmer. He moved to the stage in a tank of water that floated through the air. His body looked like a cross between an octopus and a whale, with tentacles that moved in patterns while he spoke. The deep oceans of Depthmer hide the Leviathan Krakens, he said, his voice bubbling through the water. Creatures so ancient, they remember when our world was young, so massive that our largest cities could fit inside their mouths. The holographic display showed an underwater world of incredible beauty and terror. Vast cities built from coral and metal sat on the ocean floor, their lights twinkling in the darkness. Moving between them were shapes so large, they blocked out the light from above. A single Leviathan Kraken can be 50 miles long, Admiral Glubseth explained. Their tentacles can reach across entire ocean basins. When they move, they create currents that can destroy our cities. When they feed, they swallow everything in their path, including the water itself. Jake found himself leaning forward. The scale of these creatures was hard to imagine. These beings do not hunt in the way other predators hunt, the Admiral continued. They simply exist, and their existence is dangerous to all smaller life. They move through our oceans like living storms, changing the very nature of the water around them. The display showed Depthmer cities that could move, diving deep or rising high, to avoid the paths of these massive creatures. We survive by reading the ocean currents, by listening to the songs the Leviathans sing to each other across thousands of miles. We have learned to predict their movements months in advance. Our entire civilization is built around avoiding these ancient gods of the deep. More species followed with their own incredible tales. The energy-based Voltarch described living lightning that hunted by riding electromagnetic storms. The rock-like Granite Ood told of earthquake vorms that could split continents in half. Each story seemed designed to top the previous one. Jake noticed how the speakers looked at each other, measuring reactions, trying to see whose story impressed the audience most. What had started as sharing wisdom was becoming a contest. During a break between presentations, several aliens approached Jake's section. A group of younger Karathi warriors gathered nearby, speaking loudly enough for him to hear. The human says nothing, one of them said. Perhaps Earth has no real dangers. Maybe they come from a garden world, another added. Soft creatures from a soft place. Jake continued taking notes, pretending not to hear them. But other species were listening, too, and murmurs began spreading through the crowd. Elder Vextar of the Zephyrians floated closer to Jake's section. The crystal being's voice chimed softly. Captain Morrison, we have heard nothing of Earth's survival challenges. Are there no dangerous creatures on your world? Jake looked up from his tablet and smiled politely. There are many interesting life forms on Earth, Elder Vextar. I'm still learning about your worlds, though. These stories are fascinating. The answer seemed to satisfy no one. If anything, it made the aliens more curious and more suspicious. As the day continued, the comments about humans became more direct. Commander Thackalon stood up during another break and spoke loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "We have shared our most dangerous encounters," he said. "We have told of creatures that can kill with a thought, with a touch, with their mere presence. Yet the human sits silent. Does Earth breed no warriors? Face no trials?" Other species began nodding and making sounds of agreement. The Prowlkin elder Whisperclaw added her voice to the growing criticism. "Perhaps humans achieve space travel through luck rather than strength," she said. "Perhaps they found empty worlds with no competition, no tests of survival." Jake felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon him. Representatives from 12 different species, all wondering why Earth's delegate had nothing to share. He could sense their growing assumption that humans were weak, that Earth was safe, that humanity had never faced real danger. The insults grew bolder as the day progressed. Some species began joking about soft humans and garden world children. Others wondered aloud how such a weak species had even developed technology advanced enough for space travel. Jake endured it all with patience, continuing to take notes and ask occasional questions about hunting patterns or survival techniques. His calm reaction only seemed to convince the aliens more that humans lacked the warrior spirit they respected. As the second day ended, Consul Miran again asked if anyone wished to add their voice to the gathering. Once more, all eyes turned to Jake. The expectation in the air was thick enough to cut. Jake stood slowly and looked around the vast amphitheater. Every creature present watched him, waiting to see if the quiet human would finally defend his species or admit that Earth held no real dangers. "Tomorrow," he said simply, his voice carrying clearly through the silence. "I think tomorrow would be better." He gathered his notes and left the hall, followed by whispers and speculation about what the mysterious human might finally reveal about his homeworld's survival challenges. The third day brought the biggest crowd yet. Word had spread throughout Nexus Prime about the silent human who refused to share his world's dangers. Beings who normally would not attend the survival conference came to see what would happen. Jake walked into the amphitheater and immediately felt the change in atmosphere. Conversation stopped as he passed. Thousands of alien eyes followed his movement to the human section. He sat down calmly and pulled out his tablet, acting as if nothing had changed. The first speaker was Arshay Cheap of the Voltarch, a being made of pure energy contained within a force field shaped like a humanoid. When he moved, electricity danced across his form in beautiful but dangerous patterns. "Creatures of flesh and stone," Arshap said, his voice crackling like lightning. "Hear the living lightning of Voltarch Prime." The holographic display showed a world where massive electrical storms never ended. The sky blazed with constant lightning, and the ground was covered in metal spires that conducted the energy between earth and sky. "The living lightning are not creatures as you understand them," Arshap explained. "They are electrical consciousness, beings of pure energy that hunt by riding the storm currents. They can move at the speed of light, appear anywhere electricity exists, and feed on the bioelectrical energy of living beings." Jake watched as the display showed these energy beings pursuing other life forms across the metal landscape. They moved like liquid lightning, flowing through conductors and striking without warning. "When a living lightning touches you, it does not simply kill," Arshap continued. "It absorbs your electrical essence, your nervous system, your very thoughts. You become part of its consciousness while losing your own. It gains your memories, your knowledge, your experiences." The audience listened in fascinated horror. Several species that relied on bioelectricity moved uncomfortably in their seats. "My people survive by learning to discharge our own electrical essence in controlled bursts," Arshep said. We camouflage ourselves by mimicking the electrical signatures of non-living metal. It takes decades to master this technique, and even then, the living lightning sometimes sees through our deception. As Arshep finished his presentation, Jake noticed several species glancing his way. The pressure for him to speak was building. With each story. Next came Stoneheart of the Granite Old, a being that looked like a walking mountain. His body was made of living rock, and when he moved, small pebbles fell from his surface. His voice sounded like boulders grinding together. Deep beneath the mountains of granite, Old Prime live the earthquake forms, he said. Creatures longer than continents, wider than your greatest cities. They burrow through the planet's crust as easily as you move through air. The holographic display showed a cross-section of a planet's interior. Moving through the rock were massive serpentine, forms that seemed to go on forever. An earthquake worm does not mean to cause destruction, Stoneheart explained. It simply moves, and its movement reshapes the world. When one changes direction, mountains rise or fall. When one surfaces to feed, entire continents split apart. Jake found himself genuinely impressed by the scale of the danger. These creatures could destroy civilizations without even noticing them. We, Granite Owl, do not fight these ancient beings, Stoneheart continued. We cannot. Instead, we learn to read the vibrations they create as they move through our world's core. We predict their paths years in advance and move our cities accordingly. Our entire civilization is nomadic because we must always stay ahead of the earthquake worms. As more species shared their stories, the mockery of humans became more open and cruel. During the break after Stoneheart's presentation, Commander Thackalon of the Karathi stood up and addressed the crowd directly. We have heard 3 days of survival stories, he said loudly. Stories of creatures that can control minds, swallow cities, split planets in half. Yet one representative remains silent. He pointed directly at Jake. The human sits and takes notes like a student learning from his betters. Where are Earth's survival tales? Where are the scars of battle? Where is the proof that humans have ever faced real danger? Other species began voicing their agreement. Elder Whisperclaw of the Prowlkin added her criticism. Perhaps Earth is one of those rare garden worlds, she said, her voice carrying easily through the hall. Worlds where the biggest danger is bad weather or unfriendly plants. It would explain how such a soft species achieved space travel. The insults grew harsher. The Zephyrian elder Vextar suggested that humans probably got their technology from other species rather than developing it themselves. Queen Zekra of the Heavy Nell wondered if humans had ever seen a real predator at all. Maybe. They keep pets instead of facing true hunters. She buzzed with amusement. The crowd laughed at this comment. The idea of keeping dangerous creatures as pets seemed ridiculous to beings who spent their lives running from planet-killing monsters. Jake continued taking notes throughout the mockery, his expression never changing. His calm reaction seemed to make the aliens even more convinced that humans were weak and cowardly. Admiral Glubsith of the Depthmer spoke from his floating water tank. On my world, younglings who show such fear of speaking would be cast out to face the Leviathan Krokons. Alone. Perhaps Earth needs stronger selection pressure to breed proper warriors. The comments became crueler as the day progressed. Some species began making jokes about human courage and Earth's mighty predators. Others suggested that humans probably hid underground or behind walls whenever any danger appeared. Through it all, Jake sat quietly and listened. He asked occasional questions about adaptation strategies and survival techniques, but offered no defense of his species or his world. His silence only seemed to confirm what the aliens believed about human weakness. As the afternoon sessions continued, beings from other parts of Nexus Prime began arriving to watch the spectacle. Word had spread that the human representative was being openly mocked, and many wanted to see how he would respond. The tension in the amphitheater grew thicker with each passing hour. Representatives who had been polite on the first day now felt free to express their contempt for humanity openly. The survival conference was turning into a trial of human worth. During the final break of the day, Consul Miran approached Jake's section. The ethereal moderator's usually calm demeanor showed signs of concern. "Captain Morrison," she said quietly, "the assembly grows restless. Many species are questioning humanity's place in this gathering. Perhaps it would be wise to share something of Earth's challenges before attitudes become permanently fixed." Jake looked up at her and smiled the same calm smile he had worn for 3 days. "I appreciate your concern, Consul, but I think the timing isn't quite right yet." As the day's final session began, the mockery reached its peak. Species that had never spoken to each other were uniting in their dismissal of human capabilities. The quiet representative from Earth had become a symbol of weakness in their minds. Consul Miran called for the day's final speaker, then looked directly at Jake. "Captain Morrison, would you care to address the assembly? Many here are curious about Earth's survival challenges." The entire amphitheater fell silent. Thousands of beings from dozens of species focused their attention on the lone human who had endured 3 days of increasingly harsh criticism. Jake stood slowly and walked toward the central speaking platform. Every step echoed in the absolute silence. He reached the stage and turned to face the massive crowd of aliens who had spent days mocking his species. His calm blue eyes swept across the assembly, taking in the expectant faces, the dismissive expressions, the barely contained laughter of beings who expected him to admit that Earth held no real dangers. Jake smiled and spoke in a clear, confident voice that carried to every corner of the vast hall. "Thank you for your patience," he said. "I've been listening carefully to your stories, and I think I finally understand the difference between your species and mine." Jake stood at the center of the massive amphitheater, surrounded by thousands of alien beings who had spent 3 days mocking his species. The silence was complete. Even the background hum of the space station system seemed to fade away as every creature focused on the human who was finally going to speak. "You've all shared incredible stories," Jake began, his voice calm and respectful. "Each of your species has faced dangers that would terrify most beings. You've learned to survive against impossible odds, and you should be proud of what you've accomplished." Some aliens shifted in their seats, surprised by his respectful tone. They had expected him to make excuses or admit that Earth was a safe world. "Your survival techniques are amazing," Jake continued. "You've learned to hide from predators that can phase through solid matter. You've developed mental barriers against creatures that control minds. You've built cities that can move to avoid planet-sized worms. You've mastered techniques that take decades to learn, all to stay alive in hostile environments." "Commander." Thackalon of the Karathi leaned forward in his seat, wondering where this was leading. The human sounded like he was praising them, not defending his own species. Jake activated his holographic display, and images of Earth appeared above the stage. The aliens saw a blue and green world that looked peaceful and beautiful from space. "This is Earth," Jake said. "And you're right that we took a different approach to dealing with dangerous creatures." He paused and looked around the amphitheater, making eye contact with several of the species who had mocked humans most harshly. "We didn't learn to hide from our predators. We didn't develop ways to fight them off or run away from them. We didn't build barriers to keep them out." The crowd waited, expecting him to admit that Earth had no real predators at all. "We domesticated them instead." The word "domesticated" caused confused murmurs throughout the audience. Many species didn't understand what he meant. The holographic display changed to show a massive gray wolf, its yellow eyes glowing and its fangs bared. The image was close enough that several aliens in the front rows moved backward in their seats. "This is a wolf," Jake explained calmly. "They hunt in coordinated packs of up to 30 individuals. They can track prey across hundreds of miles, using scent trails. Their bite force can crush the bones of creatures much larger than themselves. They were one of our planet's apex predators." The aliens stared at the fearsome creature on the display. It looked like the kind of predator that would require years of training to survive against. The image suddenly changed to show a golden retriever sitting in a sunny park, its tongue hanging out as human children petted its fur and played with it. "This is what we turned them into," Jake said. "We call them dogs now. They live in our homes. They sleep in our beds. They play with our children. We bred them to be our companions, our workers, our friends." The silence in the amphitheater was now complete and stunned. Several species made sounds of disbelief. Jake continued with more examples. The display showed a saber-toothed cat with fangs longer than knives, followed immediately by a house cat, sleeping peacefully in a sunny window. "Another apex predator that we convinced to join our households," he said simply. The next images showed massive wild aurochs, the fierce ancestors of cattle, followed by peaceful cows grazing in green fields. Wild boars with deadly tusks became gentle pigs on farms. Dangerous wild horses that could kill with their hooves now carried human riders in sporting events. "But those are just the beginning," Jake said, his smile growing slightly wider. "We didn't stop with the obvious predators." Queen Zekra of the Hy-Vee Nell leaned forward, her compound eyes reflecting confusion and growing concern. The holographic display shifted to show microscopic images that made several alien species recoil in horror. Tiny creatures with writhing tentacles and sharp protrusions filled the air above the stage. "These are bacteria and viruses," Jake explained in the same calm tone he had used for everything else. "Invisible predators that have killed more humans throughout our history than any other threat. They can spread through air, water, or touch. They multiply inside your body and destroy you from within." The audience made sounds of revulsion and fear. Microscopic predators were a universal nightmare for biological species. "Some of these creatures can kill millions of people in a single outbreak," Jake continued. "They adapt faster than we can create defenses. They hide inside our own bodies and use our cells to make copies of themselves." The display changed to show human laboratories with scientists working with complex equipment. "We domesticated them too," Jake said. "We use modified viruses to deliver medicine directly to diseased cells. We employ bacteria to produce antibiotics, to clean up environmental disasters, to manufacture materials we need. We've turned our smallest predators into our most useful tools." The amphitheater was now completely silent except for the sound of Jake's voice. Every alien present was staring at the human with new understanding and growing unease. "You see?" Jake said, his tone becoming more serious. "Earth isn't the garden world you assumed it was. According to your classification systems, Earth is a Class 12 Deathworld. Everything on our planet is trying to kill us, from the smallest microbe to the largest predator, from the weather patterns to the geological activity." Elder Vextar of the Zephyrians made a sound like breaking crystal. "Class 12 Deathworlds were considered uninhabitable by most galactic species." Jake continued his explanation. "The difference between humans and your species isn't that we faced easier challenges. The difference is in how we chose to meet those challenges." The display now showed various scenes of human activities that would terrify most galactic citizens. Humans swimming alongside sharks, handling venomous snakes, riding angry bulls, climbing mountains in deadly storms, diving to crushing ocean depths. "We didn't adapt by becoming better at hiding or running or fighting," Jake explained. "We adapted by making everything else work for us instead." He paused, letting this information settle into the minds of his audience. When we encountered pack hunters, we didn't build better shelters. We convinced the pack hunters to hunt for us instead. When we found creatures that could kill us with disease, we didn't just develop medicine. We turned the diseases into medicine. The final images showed humans with their various animal companions, followed by scenes of human cities, technology, and spacecraft. We turned our predators into partners, Jake said, looking directly at the aliens who had mocked humans most. Harshly, we turned our diseases into tools. We turned our hostile environment into our home. And when we ran out of challenges on Earth, we built ships and came out here to find new ones. The amphitheater remained silent for several long moments as the implications of Jake's words sank in. Commander Thackalon was the first to speak, his voice much quieter than before. You're saying that humans don't survive dangerous predators. You recruit them. Jake nodded. Exactly. And that's why we've been so interested in your stories. Every creature you've described, every challenge you've faced, every survival technique you've developed. We've been taking notes because we're wondering which of your predators might be interested in joining us too. The silence in the amphitheater stretched on as Jake's words sank into the minds of thousands of alien beings. The idea that humans might want to recruit their deadliest predators was both fascinating and terrifying. Jake wasn't finished. He gestured to his holographic display, and new images appeared. These showed scenes that made many aliens in the audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. Let me tell you more about how humans approach dangerous situations, Jake said, his voice still calm, but now carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. The display showed a human research station built directly inside an active volcano. Scientists in protective suits were collecting samples of lava while the mountain erupted around them. When we discovered that volcanoes could destroy our cities, we didn't just move away from them, Jake explained. We built research stations inside them. We learned to predict their behavior. Now we use volcanic energy to power our cities and volcanic minerals to build our technology. A next image showed humans in diving equipment swimming alongside creatures that looked remarkably similar to the Leviathan Krokans that Admiral Glub-Seath had described. The humans looked tiny next to the massive sea creatures, but they showed no fear. When we found large predators in our oceans, we didn't avoid the deep water, Jake continued. We learned to swim with them. We studied their behavior. Some of our people spend their entire lives living alongside these creatures. Admiral Glub-Seath made a bubbling sound of disbelief from his water tank. The idea of voluntarily swimming with predators that could swallow cities was incomprehensible to his people. Jake's presentation continued with increasingly disturbing examples. The display showed humans working with swarms of insects that looked disturbingly similar to the mind wasps of Hy-Veno Prime. We found creatures that could influence behavior and thought patterns, Jake said, glancing at Queen Zekra. Instead of developing mental barriers against them, we learned to work with them. We use similar creatures to study how the brain works and to treat mental illnesses. Queen Zekra's compound eyes reflected patterns of confusion and alarm. Her people spent 30 years learning to resist mental control while humans were actively cooperating with mind-affecting creatures. The images kept coming. Humans working with electricity-based life forms that crackled with dangerous energy. Humans living in underground cities built around massive worm-like creatures that moved through the earth. You spoke of creatures that could split continents, Jake said, looking at Stoneheart of the Granite Hold. We have similar creatures on Earth. Instead of running from them, we've learned to live alongside them. Some of our cities are built directly on their backs. Stoneheart's rocky form crumbled slightly at the edges, a sign of extreme distress among his people. Jake paused and looked around the amphitheater. What had started as mockery from the alien species had transformed into stunned silence and growing fear. I think you're beginning to understand, Jake said. Earth didn't make us weak. Earth made us adaptive. Every challenge we faced became an opportunity. Every predator became a potential partner. Every deadly situation became a chance to learn something new. The holographic display now showed the true scope of human activity throughout their solar system. Humans living on Mars despite the deadly radiation. Humans mining asteroids while dodging cosmic debris. Humans building stations near the sun to collect solar energy. We didn't stop with our planet, Jake explained. When Earth ran out of new challenges, we moved into space. We've learned to live in environments that would kill most species instantly. We treat radiation, vacuum, and extreme temperatures as minor inconveniences. Elder Vextar of the Zephyrians made a sound like crystal wind chimes in a hurricane. Her people considered space travel dangerous, even with the best technology. Jake's tone became more serious as he approached his final point. For 3 days, you shared stories about learning to hide from predators, to fight them off, to avoid them entirely. These are all valid survival strategies, and I respect the courage they require. He looked directly at Commander Thackalon, who had been one of the harshest critics of human weakness. But I want you to understand something important about humans. Jake continued. We don't see dangerous creatures as enemies to be defeated or avoided. We see them as problems to be solved, challenges to be overcome, opportunities to be seized. The display now showed human cities where the most dangerous predators from across Earth lived peacefully alongside humans. Wolves playing with children in parks. Large cats lounging in sunny windows. Even the smallest predators, bacteria and viruses working in laboratories to help cure diseases. This is why we've been so interested in your stories, Jake said. Every creature you've described represents a new challenge, a new opportunity for cooperation. The mind wasps that control. Thoughts could help us understand consciousness better. The earthquake worms could teach us about planetary geology. The living lightning could show us new ways to work with energy. The amphitheater was so quiet that Jake could hear the breathing of creatures hundreds of feet away. You asked about humanity's place in the galactic community, Jake said. You wondered if we were strong enough to survive alongside species that have faced such incredible dangers. Jake smiled, and for the first time, his expression wasn't entirely friendly. The question isn't whether humans are strong enough to survive alongside you, he said. The question is whether your predators are ready to meet a species that doesn't run from challenges. He gestured to the display one final time. It showed images of human exploration ships heading toward various alien homeworlds. We've already sent research teams to study the glass storms of Zephyrian Prime, Jake said, looking at Elder Vextar. Our xenobiologists are very excited about the possibility of working with living lightning. Our psychologists want to understand how mind wasps achieve such precise mental control. The alien representatives were now showing clear signs of panic. The idea of humans actively seeking out their most dangerous predators was terrifying. We're not here to ask for your protection, Jake continued. We're here to offer you ours. After all, we have thousands of years of experience turning the deadliest threats into the most useful allies. Consul Miran finally found her voice. Captain Morrison, are you saying that humans intend to attempt domestication of our homeworld predators? Jake's smile became broader. I'm saying that humans don't believe in impossible challenges, Consul. We believe in opportunities that haven't been explored yet. He began walking back toward his seat, then stopped and turned back to the stunned audience. Oh, and one more thing, Jake said casually. We brought some of our domesticated predators with us to Nexus Prime. If any of you would like to meet them, they're very friendly. Most of them. As Jake returned to his seat, the amphitheater erupted in confused discussions, panicked conversations, and urgent communications with homeworlds. The quiet human who had been dismissed as weak was now seen as representing perhaps the most dangerous. species the galaxy had ever encountered. The survival conference had become something entirely different than anyone had expected.